Hey there everybody, welcome to another episode. My name is Daniel. This is Daniel Teaches, where we talk about psychology, philosophy, motivation, all that fun stuff from a psychology student, a guy who's listening to the lectures, reading the textbooks, and all that good stuff. Thank you so much for being with me. If you're watching this on YouTube, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, I appreciate each and every single one of you. Thank you very much. Without further ado, let's talk about something that is in a very unique space right now. And that, as you can judge from the title of this video, is men's mental health. Men's mental health, why? Why should we talk about? Who gives a crap how men feel? I'll throw a couple of claims your way, and feel free to Google any of these, okay? Here are the claims. A man is less likely to seek help from a therapist or from a mental health expert, or even to go to a family doctor if he's got a pain, if he's broken a rib, if he's busted a leg. He's less likely to get help than a woman is to seek out help. A man's more likely to drop out of school. That doesn't mean high school, university, man. I'm talking high school. A man's more likely to end up in prison. A man is more likely to suffer a work-related injury or death. When they're laying bricks out in the snow, when the guy's up on that crane 50, 100 meters in the air, typically speaking, those are guys. Those that do the construction work. When we talk about suicide, if 4 people killed themselves right now on average, the chances that at least 3 of those, minimum 3 of those are men, are very high. The reason is that even though women attempt suicide more often, men are more successful at it. Men use more lethal measures. They jump off buildings. They have a lot of gun owners in the US. They blow their brains out. Men's mental health. There's obviously a problem. Men are dying at a crazy rate, but why aren't we talking about it? Folks, being a guy who's from a Middle Eastern background, I love the fact that we're talking about minorities really hard in the last 30, 40 years, but especially in the last 10, 15 years, right? We're talking a lot about indigenous people. We're talking a lot about minorities, discrimination against women, discrimination based on sex, based on ethnicities, and I think that's wonderful. Here's the problem with that. When we have a narrative of the patriarchy and toxic masculinity and men oppressing others, which there absolutely was at a point in time, and in certain places right now, you can absolutely find that to be true. Where men are in this very unique place where in one sense, they're called toxic and they're called patriarchal and they're said that being a man is easy. And in the other sense, you say, hey, if there's anything that you're upset about, like share your feelings, seek out for help. We care about you. How can you name someone public enemy number 1 and then expect them to come open up to you? If you tell me that my life is easy because I'm a man, how can I possibly look at you and feel comfortable opening up with you? Because with that very sentence, you just invalidated my entire experience of life. You don't know what I've been through. Maybe my parents died last year. Are you saying that's an easy life because I'm a man? So we're in this weird place where a lot of my friends, they say, yeah, do men have to speak up? Men have to be more emotional. It's okay for men to show their emotions. No disrespect to some of my female friends out there. But if your partner, boyfriend, or husband start being emotional with you every day, and they start opening up, and they start crying and really being themselves, at some point, not all women, but a lot of women would say, hey, dude, man up, like get it together. Because I want to cry and I want a shoulder to lean on. And if you're crying and leaning on me every day, I need you to be tough. Because I'm an emotional wreck. I need you to be the emotional stable one. Now, that's a hyperbole, right? In real life, we don't want men to be super emotional and then women to be super stoic, right? We want it to be back and forth, 50-50. But I wanted to depict you this idea where it's really hard when you say, hey man, your life is easy. You're extremely privileged. You don't suffer. Who has it harder, a man or a woman? Folks, apples and oranges. I'm not here to talk about that. But I'm here to talk about this unique position that men are in, where in one sense, we're looked at as you are in power, you oppress everyone, your life is easiest than everyone, versus, hey man, if there's a suicide, chances are it's a man more than it is a woman. Why is that? If someone dies from alcohol poisoning, it's a man. Why? Someone dies from speeding in a car accident, it's a man. Why? Why are most workplace-related deaths men? Why? We got to be very careful, because when people talk about being a man, your life is easy, don't get it mistaken. You're not talking about men. You're talking about the 1%. You're talking about a very select group of people who have all the power in the world. They are the CEOs, and they happen to be mostly men, mostly white men. Actually, the Arabs and the Saudis, like they're making a lot of money too. We just don't hear about it in the West as much. So when you say that, you go, well, a man's life must be easy. It's like, dude, when you're talking about the 1%, you're not talking about, excuse my language, quote, the trailer park trash, are you? Is his life easy? The guy who has a heroin addiction, whose parents walked out on him? He's a man, right? We got to be careful with the words we use, folks. I was in class just a few weeks ago, and one of my classmates was talking to someone beside her, and she made a comment, something sarcastic, like she goes, being a man must be hard. And then she kind of laughed. And then her friend didn't laugh. And she said it again. She said, yeah, being a man must be really hard. Dude, it is, I can't tell you how sad it is to hear something like that. Because she was insisting that being a man isn't hard at all. You have an easy life. Like, wow, yeah, what a hard life a white man must live. You got no idea what a white man's life is like. How dare you put everybody into the same column? That's crazy to me. That's like if I went up to an attractive girl and said, wow, you must have a really hard life being an attractive girl, wink, wink. I got no idea what her life is like. Because she's an attractive girl, that makes her invincible from suffering from mental health problems and other disparities and bad luck that life brings towards you. It must be hard to be a white guy. You got no idea what it's like to be a white man. Forget these collectivistic ideas. You don't know anything about the guy sitting behind you. What if the kid sitting behind you is white, he's a guy, and he lost his girlfriend recently in a car crash? And he's struggling to pay the bills, and he's got a drug addiction. How do you think that makes him feel when he hears you saying that a man has an easy life? Talking like you know anything about him when you don't. So now we're surprised why that guy doesn't get help? It's because of people those people aren't the only problem, but it's because of people like you who invalidate men's experiences. I just heard a story about a 6-foot-something guy who was sexually assaulted by a girl who was 5'3". You're going, Daniel, that doesn't make any sense. 6 foot tall, 5'3". He says when he was being sexually, he said he pushed her off. He was drinking a lot, so he didn't have his whole balance. He said this girl made an approach to him. He's sitting on the couch. She comes on top of him. He starts to push her off. She gets aggressive, right? And as she's holding him down, he's thinking, look, I could easily throw this girl off me. I could easily punch her in the face. But he said, I didn't feel comfortable putting the amount of force necessary to get her off me. Listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth. This man who was sexually assaulted by a woman who was half his size said, I am worried about putting a certain amount of force on her to defend myself from being sexually assaulted, because what will people think? Because if the story comes out that a 6-foot-something guy got sexually assaulted by a 5'3" girl, we're not going to take it seriously. We're going to laugh at him. We're going to make fun of him. We're going to say, yeah, sure she did, dude. Yeah, you could have pushed her off. Yeah, you're a man, so you can't get sexually assaulted because you want sex all the time, right? Do you see how when you spew that rhetoric, I'm not surprised that men don't seek help. I'm not surprised that men are killing themselves, because who cares about a man's struggles? There's nothing wrong with saying man up, in my opinion. Man up, be a man, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't you dare come around and then talking about men, we got to show more emotions and we care for you. No, you don't. You don't care. You like virtue signaling. And by you, I don't mean you listening, but I mean a lot of people. They like the idea of having men more emotional. They like the idea of men talking about their struggles. But in reality, there's so many people that go, you're a man. You've had 30 years to talk about your struggles. It's not about you anymore. It's about the black woman. It's about this Muslim woman. It's about this person. I don't care what you have to say anymore. It strikes an emotional chord. It really does. As a man who in one sense is extremely happy that we're talking about feelings and we're moving away from a lot of the toxic behavior in the past. Man, there was a time where a husband could have sex with his wife. He could force her to have sex and it wasn't sexual assault. A husband could not legally sexually assault his wife. If he wanted it, it's going to happen. I'm happy that we're moving away from that stuff. But in the same breath, if we start looking as every man's life is easy and you're the oppressor and you represent the patriarchy, man, it's not like that. You don't know what Jimmy from across the street is going through. Just because he's a man, that doesn't mean his life is easy. But when you put out that message, how are we surprised that young men aren't coming out? If a young man gets sexually assaulted by a girl, does he even come out and tell anyone? If a guy breaks his leg, he doesn't feel comfortable going to the medical doctor. Women go to doctors more frequently for visits, both medical reasons, like body and mental reasons, than men do. Now imagine if he gets sexually assaulted, something that is, in our society, pretty shameful. Oh my, a girl sexually assaulted you? What that does for your reputation, your social status, how people look down on you. He probably wanted it because he's a man. And then we're surprised why people don't speak up. What's going on here, folks? Well, there's a disconnect. Please help me understand. Are you seeing it? First of all, for the people listening, am I speaking totally foreign right now? Like, are you listening to me talk and you're going, Daniel, you're so wrong about this, or at the very least, that's not what I'm seeing. Where I'm growing up, this is good and that's good, and men are being talked about. And maybe because I make videos about psychological stuff and about men's issues, I hear that other side a lot that says like men are trash, men are the scum of the earth, men are the problem. So maybe it feels larger than it actually is, or it might just be a minority of people who talk about it. But being someone who's in this weird place where I'm a man, I'm interested in mental health, I want to address everybody's mental health. But when we talk about men's mental health or how hard it is for men, you hear scoffs, you hear sarcasm, you see eye rolling. I made one video once about, on TikTok I think it was. By the way, if you're not following me on TikTok, it's insane over there. Like, I don't know what I've done. I've amassed a pretty large following. It's crazy. Like, that's not to sound braggadocious, but that's to say it's a huge, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very encouraging to see so many people care about mental health, right? Because I don't dance on there. I talk about mental health. I made this one video about men's mental health, and I made some of the claims that I made earlier on in this video about men being more likely to kill themselves, more likely to drop out of school, more likely to end up in prison. Do you know what the first comment was in that video? Guess. I made a video about men's mental health. What was the first comment on that video? It was about women. I made one video talking about men's mental health, and the first comment was, well, women have it worse. That's how much we care about men's mental health. It matters. We care, but not as much about women's mental health. Excuse me, we don't care about it as much as we care about women's mental health. We don't care about it as much as we care about minorities' mental health. Why are we putting people's health in hierarchies? Why are we doing that? Why are we going to a place where it says, well, if you're a woman, we care about your mental health more than if you're a man. But if you're a white woman, we're not going to care about your mental health as much as we would if you're a black woman. If you're a black woman who's also... Do you see what I mean? Again, I hope that I'm just speaking about the minorities, but the minorities happen to be really loud. Like the people who have that sort of an idea that put health in these hierarchies. You know, that go, if you're a white man, you're in the bottom of the hierarchy. You're at the bottom of the food chain because your life is easy. Men have it tough, dude. Men have it really tough. So what do you do when you're a man? What do you do when you feel like you don't have an outlet, right? Who do you talk to about this stuff? A lot of people grow up without fathers, maybe without brothers. Who do you talk to? Maybe you've never approached a girl before. How do you approach a girl? How do you know if a girl likes you? How do you know if she likes you versus she's just being friendly? How do you become a leader? If I'm in a room with 3 girls and there's a danger, implicitly I know that they look towards me to be a leader or to initiate it, or I feel it anyways. I feel like I should. But what if no one's ever taught me how to lead? What if I feel just as scared as everybody else? Do I have to be a leader because I'm a man? Is it okay if I'm not a leader? Is it okay if I don't ever initiate? Is it okay if I'm emotionally unstable? Is it okay to not be brave or courageous? What if I want to be brave or courageous? How can I be? One of the good things about, because if you look at psychology right now, I don't think it's a hyperbole to say that 3/4 of the people in psychology are women. The majority of therapists are women, and the majority of people who go to therapy are women. If you look at my classes, let's say if there's 100 kids, on average, 75% of them are women. 75% of them are women. There's about 25 that are men. And I think it's good in a sense, right? Because women are always praised on their emotional subtleties. And look, I don't know if it's a rhetoric like, oh, women are emotional creatures, they're full of hormones, they can't think straight. That's not what I mean. I mean that women at a young age are very good at picking up on subtle cues. And a lot of them, like the majority of them, are very caring and very compassionate. And they pick up on little things very well. Whereas, quote unquote, like the boyfriend is much more likely to have something go over his head, to be dull, to not focus on emotions as much, to not validate emotions as much, on average, right? Obviously, you're going to have guys who are more sensitive. You're going to have girls who are more stoic and don't care about emotions. So don't think that I'm saying all women are this, all men that. Not at all. But on average. So in one sense, I think it's good having guys like me who are going into psychology. Whereas if you're a guy, you want to talk to women because they're going to emphasize emotion and validation. It's great. But it's really good to be able to talk to another man who's been in your place, right? Who's asked out a girl, who's been rejected, who's thought about being a leader, who's been a leader and failed, and then other people look down on you. So someone who's more closely walked in your shoes, right? The way that a girl might feel more comfortable talking to another girl if they're talking about something feminine related, right? Whatever the topic may be. So anyways, I think it's good. I think it's good. There's a mixture of both. But I'm not surprised that then men search for an outlet, right? And what is that outlet? Well, one of them is you discover this guy who's tough. He's done martial arts all his life. He's a cage fighting commentator. He's got a podcast on where he brings on Mike Tyson and other badass dudes. And his name is Joe Rogan. And he's got over, like 12 million subscribers on YouTube? Of course he does. Of course he does. Because when the world calls you toxic and patriarchal and you're this and that, and one guy stands up and not only is he tough, and is he brave and courage and he embodies that stuff, but he's also demonstrates a lot of other characteristics like being able to lead, being curious, being able to initiate conversations, being bold in his statements, and people gravitate towards that. Men gravitate towards that. And he's a guy that they look up to in many ways, you know, or maybe you have another guy who's worked in the oil mines, so he's also tough, but he has a very fascinating way of articulating his thoughts. And he studies clinical psychology. I'm talking about Jordan Peterson. So now you have a guy who doesn't look tough, he doesn't have the tattoos, he's not a bodybuilder, but he speaks frighteningly well. And he's a man, and he has a better idea of what men go through. And then you're surprised why he's got millions and millions of followers? Folks, yin and yang, right? Whenever there isn't something, something will rise. Superheroes give rise to supervillains and vice versa. A problem gives rise to a solution, a question gives rise to an answer, and an issue gives rise to someone or something addressing said issue. If there's no issue, I promise you Jordan Peterson wouldn't be as big, Joe Rogan isn't as big as he is, but there's a space for these guys. There's a space for, especially in the last 10, 15 years, of people who advocate for men's rights, advocate for, by men's rights, I just mean talking about men, who do things like pickup artists and how to be a guy, how to not be a simp and that stuff. I'm not saying it's all good. It has its bad spots, believe me, but I completely understand. Whereas you're a young man, you've had some tough experiences, you feel embarrassed to come out and talk to people because people assume that your life is easy. So you turn to the Joe Rogans, you turn to the Jordan Petersons who say, dude, there's nothing wrong with being a man. You should be proud of being a man, but you shouldn't be proud of being a loser. You should be tough. You should be brave. You should be courageous. Absolutely. But you should also think well, and you should speak well, and your feelings matter and they should be validated. And you don't have it easy. You've got a bunch of struggles, man. But that doesn't mean you get to play victim. That doesn't mean you get to play victim. You highlight your positives, you acknowledge your negatives, and you move forward because you want to be an asset to society, not a goddamn burden. And when you do that, all of a sudden people go, holy shoot, what a brilliant way to put it. You praise me for the things that I'm doing well, but you don't lie to me. They look at you in the eyes and go, look, not all men are going to be courageous, right? Which is a good thing. But also they add on to that and they go, look, but shouldn't you strive to be courageous if you're a man? It's not embarrassing if you're not. But for yourself, for your family, for yourself, don't you want to be a courageous person? Don't you want to be a kind person? Don't you want to be someone who people can depend on? And it's the right amount of praise mixed in with honest criticism that motivates you like a coach and keeps you going forward. As you can tell, I'm biased and I'm a fan of those guys. That doesn't mean that I agree with everything that they say, but I understand that there was a need in the market for some manly men to come, whether they were physically tough, whether they were intellectuals who can carry a conversation, speak on men's behalf, and lo and behold, it captures people's attention. It's a very weird place to be a man right now. And I'm very curious to see what the developments are going to be in 5 to 6 years' time. My hope is that the world isn't as divided as I think it is. It's not as divided as Twitter makes it out to be. I hope that we can come together and realize, folks, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter what your political affiliation is, whether you're for vaccines, against vaccines. We're all human beings, and we could all use a hand. I want to help everybody. I don't know anything about your life. Do you have certain privileges that another person doesn't have because of your ethnicity? Sure. Does that mean you have an easy life? I don't know. I don't know you. I don't know anything about your life. So how about we talk first, and then we can talk about having easy lives. Before I make this assumption, well, you have blonde hair, so you must have an easy life. How do you know? How do you know that? With one sentence, you can invalidate someone's experience, so now they don't feel comfortable coming and talking to you because anything that they say isn't a big deal, right? So what if your 6-foot guy has been sexually assaulted? You have an easy life. Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. My entire hope is that as I progress throughout my life, I will deepen my knowledge and understanding of psychology. I will deepen my knowledge and understanding of mental health. I'll be able to provide you advice that is more rich and congruent with the literature out there. And I want to eventually become a person who people can come to, whether literally in person, who has an office, or online, regardless of your sex, your ethnicity, or religious affiliation, your political affiliation. I'm here. I want to hear your story. I want to help you out in any way I can. And if you think that your life is easy because you're a man, I promise you're making a mistake. Actually, let's take that sentence. Your life is easy because, and you put any sort of goofy characteristic on there, because you're born in America, because you have 2 parents, because you're a pretty girl, that doesn't mean you don't have certain privileges that other people don't have. But to label your entire life easy because you have 2 parents, man, what if those parents abused you? So now you got to sit down, well, is it better to have no parents or is it better to have abusive parents? Like, I don't want to get into comparing apples and oranges, but we got to start taking people's health seriously. We got to start taking men's mental health seriously because they need help. And we can't label them public enemy number 1 and in the same breath say, hey, we're here for you. How dare you insult a man and then ask him to be vulnerable the next? And then you wonder why men don't seek help. I got nothing more to say. That's it. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed.